Why is Greece still struggling, and are there any solutions to its current problems? When most people think of Greece, they think of paradise. Blue oceans, ancient history, cheap holidays, and sunsets over white villages. But, behind the postcard image is a country still fighting one of the biggest national crises in modern European history. It is a country that lost a quarter of its economy, watched hundreds of thousands of young people leave, and now faces debt, population collapse, climate disasters, and rising geopolitical tensions, all at the same time. So, what actually happened to Greece? Why is it still struggling? And, can it recover? To understand modern Greece, you have to go back to the global financial crisis of 2008. Before the crash, Greece had been borrowing huge amounts of money. Governments spent heavily, public sector jobs expanded, and taxes often went unpaid. However, cheap loans kept the system alive. Then, the global economy crashed. Suddenly, investors realized Greece owed way more money than it could realistically repay. The result? An economic catastrophe. The Greek economy shrank by around 25%, which is Great Depression-level damage. Imagine, 1 out of every $4 in your entire economy simply disappearing. Businesses collapsed, wages fell, pensions were cut. Unemployment exploded, and young people couldn't find work. Unsurprisingly, many Greeks blamed not only their own politicians, but also the European Union and international banks. At one point, Greece came dangerously close to leaving the Eurozone entirely. And even today, the scars are still there, but surprisingly, debt may not be Greece's biggest problem anymore. The real crisis could be demographics, since Greece has one of the lowest birth rates in Europe. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of educated young Greeks left the country after the financial collapse. Doctors, engineers, scientists, programmers. An entire generation packed their bags and moved to countries like Germany, the UK, and Australia looking for opportunity, and that created a vicious cycle. Fewer young workers means fewer taxpayers, slower economic growth, higher pension costs, and an aging population that becomes harder to support. Some Greek villages are literally dying out, and unlike a debt crisis, you can't solve a demographic crisis overnight, when millions of young people, crucial to economic growth, are missing. Another major issue is that Greece still struggles with deep structural problems, such as endemic corruption, a bloated bureaucracy, widespread tax evasion, a sclerotic legal system with slow courts, and political patronage. Now, to be fair, these problems exist in many countries, but in Greece, they became deeply embedded over decades, since businesses often complain it can be difficult to get permits, navigate regulations, or deal with the state efficiently. And when investors feel uncertain, they invest elsewhere. The deeper issue is this: Greece never built the kind of powerful industrial economy you see in places like Germany or South Korea. Instead, Greece relies heavily on tourism, shipping, and services. That means when global shocks happen, like COVID, wars, or economic downturns, Greece gets hit hard, very hard, because if tourists stop arriving, money stops flowing. And now there's another threat growing rapidly: climate change. Greece is becoming hotter, drier, and more vulnerable to extreme weather. Wildfires have devastated parts of the country in recent years, and some islands struggle with water shortages during tourist season. The bottom line is the heat waves are becoming more intense. Ironically, the same beautiful climate that attracts tourists could eventually become part of the problem, because Greece's economy depends heavily on outdoor tourism. If summers become unbearable, or the infrastructure starts failing under extreme heat, the economic consequences could be severe. Then, there's geopolitics. Greece and Turkey have had tensions for decades, with disagreements over maritime borders, islands, airspace, and energy rights in the eastern Mediterranean. And because the two countries sit between Europe and the Middle East, migration pressures add even more tension. At times, Greece feels like Europe's frontline state, trying to balance border security, humanitarian pressures, tourism, and regional stability, all at the same time. So, is there any hope for Greece? Surprisingly, yes. Despite all these problems, Greece has actually improved in several important ways. The economy has stabilized, unemployment has fallen from crisis-era highs, digital government services have improved dramatically, foreign investment has started returning. And Greece is investing heavily in renewable energy. In fact, Greece could potentially become a major solar and wind energy hub for Europe. It also has strategic advantages such as a critical shipping location, strong tourism appeal, highly educated people, and membership in the European Union. But long-term recovery depends on whether Greece can transform itself into a more productive, modern economy, which means reducing corruption, improving institutions, keeping young talent from leaving, supporting families, and building industries beyond tourism. The challenge isn't just economic, it's psychological, because after years of crisis, many Greeks have lost trust in the future itself, and rebuilding national confidence may be the hardest task of all. Greece is one of the oldest civilizations on Earth. It is the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and Western political thought. But today it faces a modern dilemma. Can an ancient nation reinvent itself in a rapidly changing world? The answer is still being written, and what happens next won't just matter for Greece, it may become a warning, or a lesson, for the rest of Europe too. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more deep dives into politics, economics, and the forces shaping our world. And let me know in the comments, can Greece fully recover? Or are its biggest problems only beginning? See you in the next video.